My name's Brian Rush. Welcome back to the lodge here at Rush Custom Callers YouTube channel. Let's have a seat and we're going to get back to the next episode.
Oh, he's right behind that cow. I just see his head. Yep. Yeah. He gone. Yeah, buddy.
Double dump.
Double dump. Tally ho!
So when I talk about habitat, I've said this a lot, I call it rabbitat. I want to find that thickest, gnarliest rabbitat, that rabbit habitat, that really thick stuff. So when I find rabbitat, I spend a lot, if I have permission to coyote hunt there, I typically have permission to run my beagle for rabbits. And when my beagle and I are rabbit hunting, I'm looking for all of those things for predators. You know, daytime hunting with my beagle, and oh wow, there's a lot of coyote sign, fox, bobcat. If I find that sign in that thick rabbitat, that really thick stuff, it's usually a pretty good indicator that that predator is after prey, and that rabbitat is gonna hold a food source for the animal that you're pursuing. So when I talk about habitat, I'm really looking for cover, thick stuff to actually hold another food source for that predator. So if this is early season, like our season right here in upstate New York, we start, coyote opens after sunrise, October 1st, and runs through the last Sunday in the month of March. It's basically a six month long season. So typically right at the very beginning of March, right at the very beginning of October, I am strictly going to stick with my rabbit squealer, prey distress sounds, and that's when we usually get a lot of those hard charging, uneducated, that season's pup, which is now an adolescent. It is an adult coyote at that point of that animal's age. That's where you're going to get a lot of those hard chargers. Early October, ripping across the field, coming to a call. A lot of fun, really exciting. I'm going to stick with prey distress sounds in October. Now, as the season starts to progress from early October into November, we're going to reach that point where we're going to be hitting that dispersal, where that family group starts to break up. So these are conversations that I've had with landowners in the past, where you have that one farm and the landowner has a persistent predation issue with coyotes. They've verified fact. They've seen the coyotes becoming a nuisance with livestock, picking off some livestock. They don't want them on the property. So this is the conversation I have with that landowner. Andy and I, hypothetically, we could come onto the property right at the very beginning of October, and we could kill that whole family group. Mom, dad, all of the kids. Done. And we have satisfaction knowing that the landowner's not seeing them, they're not hearing them, they're not on trail cameras anymore. Wait 10 minutes and that void is going to be filled. So when you have properties that border other agricultural districts, outskirts of urbanized areas, especially when you get into those fringes with, you know, cul-de-sac development, new construction, then you got that one pre-existing farm, you kill all of the coyotes on that one farm. They were there for a reason. And the reason is sustainability and habitat. That animal has everything that they need to survive. So if you kill off that family group, what happens when you get into November here in New York is that dispersal. So your core areas and then your home range, okay? two different things. Bigger habitat, bigger home range. Tighter habitat, agricultural districts stacked on top of each other. Your core areas are still comparable in size, but your home ranges start to shrink and then you start to have overlaps. So if you kill all of your what you can define as resident coyotes, the coyotes that you're seeing spring through summer, and then you kill them in the fall, wait 10 minutes, the void is going to be filled, because as long as there's not a negative detrimental impact to the habitat of that farm, it's conducive habitat. You killed the coyotes, there's no sound, there's no vocalizations, there's no scent, there's no visual. They're not there anymore. So that coyote from another family group that is now a transient that gets kicked out of that family group, where the family group recognizes too many chefs in the kitchen, mom, dad, they're your residents, they stick around, and if they have, 6 pups, eastern coyotes have a very low mortality rate. If you have 6 pups, you're probably going to have 6 juveniles, you're going to have 6 adolescents, and then there's a point where Mother Nature is way smarter than we are, and those coyotes, those adult mom and dad, recognize too many chefs in the kitchen, they'll kick and disperse that family group out. They might keep a couple of female helpers around, but the rest of those coyotes, those are going to be now defined as what we call transients. They don't have a core area. They don't have a home. What do they want to find? They want to find a core area. They want to find a home. They want to start their own family group. They're growing up. They're going to have that natural instinct to breed. And eventually, they're going to wander and they're going to find that property where you just killed that whole family group of coyotes from. When they find that, they're going to use their nose, their eyes, their ears, and they're going to recognize, wow, nobody's here. This is a really nice house, and you're going to start the dynamic all over again. So this is where game calling comes into play, just having this knowledge where early season prey distress calls are great. Soon as you start to hit that dispersal right into that time frame, something that's really keyed in on every coyote are those whimpers, those chirps, those ki-eyes, what they heard when they were in their litter, in their little family group. They heard them because they were communicating with them in that family group when they were juvenile. Now they're on their own. Mom and dad are conditioned to that. So as time progresses, as the season progresses, prey distress in the beginning, and then we typically stick with a lot more vocalizations. We start as inviting as possible, invitational howls. We make that howl, you hit your apex of sound, and then there's a nice rollover at the end. We want to sound as inviting as possible, and then we'll just listen to what the response is. We do a lot more vocalizations mid-season, and then now we're starting to get closer into the actual breeding season of coyotes. So coyotes, eastern coyotes, have a 62-day gestation period from conception to birth, 62 days. So typically here in upstate New York, our peak breeding for coyotes, latter part of February into March. So if that female coyote is bred mid-March, mid-April, mid-May, conducive time of year for mom to be having pups for optimal conditions for survival. So knowing those gestation periods also comes in very important on how to vocally communicate with the animal. Prey distress sounds early season. As season progresses into that dispersal time of year, still good with prey distress sounds because you'll still have those transients, and typically your transient coyotes are going to be your juvenile that were born that same year. But we transition into a lot more vocalizations, and then especially when we're in call it the pre-coyote rut. Peak breeding is coming up, pre-rut into rut, And then not so much into post-rut, we're going to transition back to the beginning with a lot more prey distress sounds at the end of the year. So simple things that we keep in mind of, the seasonal progression of how the coyote actually operates in our area and how they survive. We'll keep those in mind with how we're audibly going to communicate with that animal for success out in the field.